Good afternoon. We are starting interviewing skills session. This is ACFE UK annual general meeting, session number 1. Right. First of all, let me say a few words about interviewing skills. Why do I study that? Because I think it's super interesting. It's an art, not a science, not exactly the science. And as you can see on the left-hand side on the picture, I am with a group of police officers, and like 8 years, it was 2015, 8 years after, I'm still sending my teacher Don Raben the pictures about interviewing from Victoria and Albert Museum. And by the way, this is a great statue called Truth and Falsehood. And yeah, as I said, it's an art like in martial arts, which I'm practicing. It's first of all about yourself, about overcoming your own weaknesses. That's why I studied. Agenda will cover today interviewing skills and fraud, who is interviewer, planning and preparation, and questioning strategies or interviewing strategies, and detecting deception. Well, fraud and investigations and interviewing, why it's all interconnected and why fraud investigator should be an interviewer. Let's take a definition of fraud, and I'll just Google it, this simple one, from Oxford Language Dictionary. Fraud is wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. In any definition of fraud, there is deception. So fraud is carried out through deception, with deception, and it cannot go without deception. Therefore, to investigate fraud, you need to be able to deal with deception. It's that easy. Alright, now interviewing skills. There are two sets of skills, I would say, hard skills and soft skills. And I'll touch upon hard skills or technical skills a bit later, but before that I want to cover soft skills. I think it's most important skill for the interviewer. At the end of the day, how interviewer treats the interviewee is the most critical factor, and you will see why. This is really so. Now, hard skills. What interviewers should be able to do? A set of prerequisite skills: elicit response, second, detect deception, and third, gain compliance. In other words, can you make somebody to speak to you on a consistent basis? Can you tell if an individual is truthful or trying to withhold the truth? And finally, can you change someone's behavior, subject's behavior, from that of deceiving to that of telling truth? These are the 3 prerequisite skills. The most important element is planning and preparation. Remember this: fail to prepare, prepared to fail. And we can talk about planning and preparation in 2 broad categories. One is preparing to specific interview, and second is preparing yourself as an interviewer, and the second is most difficult. But first, let's cover off specific preparation. You have to know your case, you have to conduct KYC on your subject. Unless you do that, you're going to look pale in the interview. As simple as that. Now, questions. Interviewing is questioning. Now, there are 2 different views on this. Like, do you have to have question list, or you don't need it? I can answer as follows. At least you have to have questioning areas, the areas you need to cover off, but you don't go through your questions in as predetermined list. You have to follow with the interview. You have to pay attention to what is being said to you and go down each and every avenue of investigation, following basically the lead of your interviewee. And then once you follow through one avenue, you can return to your question. So you have to have it, but you don't treat it as set in stone. You don't let interview list dictate the flow of the interview. Now, the third area is logistics, room layout, interview interviewer props, it's all important. We'll talk about it a bit more during first 3 minutes of interview topic. Now, as I said, individual preparation or interviews preparation is not a one-off thing. It's constant work on yourself to increase, enhance, and develop your capabilities, to pay attention, to listen actively, to communicate, to ask questions on a consistent basis with anyone in any circumstances. And you can practice it every single day. It's very important. Now, very important thing, maintaining objectivity. Let me play a little audio file to you. It's Don Rayburn, and then we talk about objectivity.
Greetings, and let's take a few minutes and talk about preventing inadvertent interviewer disclosure by maintaining objectivity. The bottom line is this: how we think is how we come across. And how we come across plays no small role in the success or the failure of the interview outcome. So what we're looking at here is how to maintain objectivity so that our verbal, vocal, and nonverbal communication with the interviewee is conducive to the outcome of the interview that we want. And the bottom line is, studies show that how we relate or come across to that interviewee is more important than the techniques that we use. You ever been in a situation?
I'll stop here. So, how we come across to that interview is more important to techniques that they use. Think about it. This is what I said about the interviews preparation. This is what I said about soft skills. How that person sees you as an interviewer, if you're objective or not, is basically, it plays crucial role to the outcome of the interview, to the agreement, willful agreement of the subject to tell you the truth or to continue withholding the truth. And it's almost impossible to disguise, because your verbal, vocal, and non-verbal behavior will show clearly to any person, to a subject, what you think of him or her. That's why it's so important. And let me just play you a bit at the end.
Make yourself be able to assess the circumstances for what it is. We can strengthen our capability to use our past experience. That's great, but use it as a reference and still be able to evaluate the situation in the present. In summary, here's the bottom line on that. Our objectivity or lack thereof is going to influence how we think. How we think is going to influence how we come across, verbally, vocally, and non-verbally. If we've already made up our mind, it's going to come across. If we've got an open mind, then it's going to come across that way. If we are dealing with the situation personally, when we should be dealing with it professionally, we're going to communicate in a way that's against our own self-interest. I'm never going to tell you that it's easy. I'm just telling you that it's necessary. Work on it. Eyeball this short clip a couple times if you think it'll help, but train yourself to be aware of your own thinking. Thank you.
So, thinking about thinking or metacognition, this is very important. We all tend to use system 1 when we're thinking. We're coming to fast conclusion. What we need to do is to force ourselves to use system 2, slow thinking. This is thinking about thinking. This is what Don said, metacognition. We have to force ourselves on purpose to explain how we reach certain conclusion and why. This is super important. This is what instills discipline into the interviewing process. All right, and this is exactly maintaining objectivity. Empathy. We've talked about maintaining objectivity, but empathy is probably the other very important element of how you come across to that individual in front of you. We can call it active listening. I like this metaphor which I borrow from Tim Harvey. Remember how you behave on the first date. This is active listening. This is listening with all your ears, eyes, and every fiber of your soul. This is how you should listen. This is how you should come across. This is how you should pay attention. And paying attention is exactly this word paying is describing what it is. You invest part of yourself to that interview. You give out your attention, your energy, your mental resources to that interview, to that interviewee. This is empathy, this is active listening, this is paying attention. Now, first 3 minutes of the interview, this is super important because it will dictate how you are perceived for the rest of the interview, and this is very difficult to change. Your first 3 minutes is the time where subject will formulate his attitude, his perception of you. Therefore, it's super important to go through this properly. And for simplicity, I've used Don Rabin's model of splitting it into 3 stages: 45 seconds, 90 seconds, and 180 seconds. In the first 45 seconds, remember 3 things: eye contact, smile, and pathetic communication. Eye contact. There are different studies like what's the appropriate amount of eye contact, but in most cultures 50% is what is perceived to be normal. Remember, smile, genuine smile is very powerful. If you come in and you smile and you look person in his eyes or her eyes and you stretch out your hands and you properly introduce, this is what sets proper attitude from the very beginning. Now, first 90 seconds, calling person by their name studies show it has incredible power. Use first name of the person, then you talk to him or to her. And handshake. You know, there are different types of handshake. Don't do dead fish handshake. Do a proper firm handshake. Finally, 180 seconds of the interview, try to find commonality, and it's not that difficult. Whoever you speak to, you can find common places, common times, common books, music, sports, or something in common which can help to relate to that individual. Remember, how you relate to individual dictates the outcome of the interview. So use first 3 minutes to set the stage properly. Interviewing strategy. This is simple formula. Interviewer influences interviewee or subject to produce certain behavior. And the way how interviewer influences interviewee dictates the outcome. Think about this as follows. You always, whether you want it or not, influence someone you talk to, verbally, vocally, and non-verbally. Then you can influence that person to open up and cooperate, and vice versa. You can influence that person to close, shut down, and not to cooperate. So your goal is to make that person, interviewee, subject, comply and tell you the truth. This is quite difficult because basically you're trying to change behavior from what is natural to withhold sensitive and probably quite damaging information, and you want to change it to to disclose that information to you. And the emphasis here, work on yourself, work on I here. I is the most important element which starts and defines the influence. That arrow comes from I. So I, interviewer, how he behaves, how he acts first 3 minutes before the interview, during the interview, dictates the nature of the influence. Alright, interviewing process A, B, C, and D. A. Allow subject to speak. In good interview, 90% of the time, at least 80% of the time, interviewee should speak. And only 10%, maximum 20% of the time, it's the interviewer. And it's very difficult. If you think about it, we all love to speak. We love to be listened to. We think like what we have to say is super important, but interview is not about you. It's about him. It's about her. It's about the subject. Therefore, it's much more important to listen to what they say and allow subject to speak. Then be attentive, and paying attention, as I said, is very, very difficult because you're literally paying something. You're investing out of your pocket. So studies show that average attention span is like 8 minutes. Think about it. You have to pay attention for 3-4 hours. So it's hard work. Center on changes, and we'll talk about it later, and then direct subsequent questions to areas where changes were noted. Now, silence and pause. First of all, don't treat pause or silence as an empty space which needs to be filled in. No, you're still communicating non-verbally to that person. Look at this jaguar here. Can you see communication in these eyes? I can. Now, also silence, give that person time to think about the answer or to think whether he wants to change his behavior. Finally, silence and pause gives you that control of the interview process. Whoever is capable of using silence properly basically controls the interview. Now, detecting deception. So if your subject wants to deceive you, he will produce one set of behavior. If this subject wants to tell the truth, he will produce the other set of behavior. Behaviors can be verbal, vocal, and non-verbal. So when you establish your baseline, then you ask non-sensitive questions about the weather, about him or her, about the background. You see one set of behavior, which is normally the truth. Now then, it's very important when you transition to more and more sensitive question to be able to notice changes in behavior, and they can be big or small, outward or subtle. It's important to notice them. And then, like on this picture where you can see truth is pulling tongue of the falsehood, in the same way you use questions in the area where you notice the changes in behavior. Now, deception, stress, and anxiety. Deception produces stress, and stress manifests itself through verbal and non-verbal clues. But as you probably know, it's not only deception which can cause stress. And what you see in verbal and non-verbal clues is signs of stress. It's your job to understand what is the real cause of that stress and anxiety. Is it deception or is it something else? Maybe that person forgot to close the door. Maybe that person is being late for a school run. Maybe that person is worried about money or something else. There can be a million different reasons for stress and anxiety, and you cannot just assume that changes in behavior is because of deception. It can be because of other factors, and it's your job to understand why. Now, let's go through verbal and non-verbal clues. Changes in speech patterns, voice pitch, repetition of the question, comments regarding the interview, oaths, feigned unconcern, answering with a question, selective memory. It's all verbal clues. Now, non-verbal clues, full body motions, illustrators, primarily hands, hands over mouth, touching lips, manipulators, displacement activities, fleeing positions. All of this, as you will see in the video, are indicators of stress and anxiety. And we'll have good examples of this. Now, practical part, and let me just jump into it because we'll have good opportunity to talk about specifics in the Q&A session. Now, just let's use some examples to go over the strategies and tactics we've been discussing so far. This is the House Judiciary Committee hearing on politicking at the Supreme Court. Just look at this interview and try to see what went wrong here and why.
Mr. Shank, did Gail Wright really tell you that?
Yes.
Justice Alito said he didn't tell her. She said she didn't tell him, but you're sure she told you?
Absolutely.
Now, you wrote a book a couple years ago, is that right? 2018, you wrote a book?
Yes.
I want to read a section from that book. It's a section where you relate you and your family attended oral arguments at the court. You were there in the courtroom, and that directly involved your brother Paul, also a reverend. And I just want to read this section. You said, with the single rap of the gavel, Chief Justice William Rehnquist announced, "We'll hear argument first this morning in number 995-1065, Reverend Paul Shank and Dwight Saunders versus Pro-Choice Network of Western New York."
So can you tell me what you're seeing so far? Just out of interest. How you think this interview is going? Well, let's see how this interview ends.
Obviously didn't happen. We got the transcript, we got the audio, but you made it a big deal in your book. One thing I've learned, people who mislead folks on small things mislead them on big things. And you know what? You can lie in a book, it's not a crime. You can lie to the New York Times, that's not a crime. But when you come in front of Congress and you say things that are not true, you're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. And we have seen it. You're not supposed to do that. I yield back.
So, let's look at this interview. What's the split of the time between interviewer and interviewee here? What do you see? Does this interviewer pay attention to his subject? What do you think? How well is he prepared? So, as you can see, the normal and realistic outcome of this interview is complete disaster. Try to remember this as an example, not just to prepare to your interview prior to conducting, but also to pay attention, to listen, to be influencing that subject in a way which is conducive to the goal, to the final outcome of the interview.
Mr.
Now, physiology of deception. This is very interesting clip, and I'll play it to you in full. It illustrates quite clearly how deception causes stress and how stress manifests itself in verbal and non-verbal behaviors. Just know that this is not a real interview. This people, 5 subjects, they were asked to deceive the interviewer. So they are in a much easier situation, if you know what I mean. They know they've been asked to deceive and still look at their behavior, try to notice more changes, more than what is just being described to you by the ACFE representative.
Tire on the way here.
Blowout on my tire.
I had a flat tire on the way here, and a nice little old lady stopped to let me use her cell phone, and I couldn't get a hold of you, so she...
When our interviewer, John Fisher Weber, a certified fraud examiner with the Texas State Auditor's Office, offers this subject a ride back to his car, his hand repeatedly goes to his face. He knows he can't accept a ride without revealing that he didn't really have a flat.
Is it more comfortable if I drove you over since you know me?
No, I don't think that'd be good at all.
Did you hear something about my driving? Or?
No, I just, well...
There are several behaviors associated with deception that involve the mouth. Look for obstruction behavior like this one. The subconscious goal of this conduct is to impede anything damaging from emerging. Wetting the lips and pressing them together is a sign of stress too.
Okay. Did you put the spare on it, or?
No, I couldn't get the lug nuts off.
Okay.
After his fabrication, he presses his lips together. So does this subject.
Did you lose control of your car?
No, not really. I noticed it and I pulled to the right.
Okay.
This behavior is a simple reaction to tension. Since lying increases stress, mouth movement is an ideal barometer for rising anxiety levels.
For a lady to stop in today's day and age, and
I know.
that's incredible.
She was really nice, yeah. Definitely.
And a nice car, right?
Nice
Sometimes
car.
if we've been told to look someone in the eye when we speak, people are naturally reluctant to meet the eyes of the person they're deceiving for fear that their falsehood will be discovered. During the initial phase of an interview, establish what you think is the normal amount of eye contact for a subject. As your questions increase the pressure, look for a reduction in that amount. If a subject is being deceptive, he might look down at his hands or at the ceiling as if trying to remember something. The point, though, is to avoid looking at the interviewer, as this subject does here.
That was an awful nice lady that stopped. Tell me about her and what she drove and everything.
She drove a blue sedan, and we basically just talked about the job interview, and I kind of told her to hurry up.
Note how this next subject looks down throughout his answer to Weber's question.
What are you going to do with your car?
Probably get it fixed, have it towed into a service
People
shop.
tend to blink more often when they're trying to think quickly, like this subject when asked about the color of the car.
And what color was it?
It was green.
She blinks before and several times after answering. Take another look.
It was green.
Eyebrows are one of the easier facial features to read. When we're angry, we frown. When we're surprised, we raise our eyebrows, just like this man does when faced with an unexpected question.
Actually, my brother was going to go by there and he's got an extra set of keys. He was going to change the tire for me. And,
Well, how did you get a hold of him?
good question. Good question.
What color was the car?
It was brown.
Delaying tactics like the one we just saw indicate hesitation, uncertainty, and a desire to postpone answering. Truthful subjects are unlikely to formulate their answers that way.
What did you talk about on the way home?
Just how much I couldn't believe that this happened
Of all times.
of all times on my way to an interview.
What'd she say to that?
She was kind of shocked, you know, giggling.
She was shocked and giggling?
Yeah.
Because she's experiencing stress as a result of trying to deceive Weber, her answer doesn't make sense. She's nervous and flustered, but still trying to appear that all is well. So is this subject.
Okay. Which tire was it?
It was my front right tire.
People who are being deceptive are likely to make conflicting statements, like the one this subject makes when asked about the car.
I didn't see what color it was. I don't remember.
It's also common to drop the ball on details. After all, fabrications can become pretty complicated. John Weber catches this gentleman with a very simple question.
Do you need a token for the parking garage?
Yes, please.
When he realizes what he said, he even laughs at his own mistake.
Oh, no, you don't need a token for the parking garage.
No, I don't.
You don't have a car. Okay.
Repeating phrases allows the subject more time to think of an answer. The phrase "you know" appears 3 times in this subject's answer. As we'll see later on, this particular phrase can furthermore indicate that the subject is seeking validation.
What did you talk about on the way over, just out of curiosity?
I was just told I was, that I was actually coming to an interview, and that kind of telling about what I was expecting or what I did, and asked her kind of what she did and stuff like that.
Sometimes the phrase itself can be more telling than they intend.
Believe it or not, had a flat tire.
How did you get here?
Believe it or not, a lady stopped.
The phrase precedes a falsehood in both instances. Fragmented speech can be an additional sign of deceit. When caught in a stressful situation that requires them to lie, some people begin to speak in broken, stumbling sentences, often trailing off without finishing a thought.
What will you do about your car?
I guess, I didn't have time to, I don't think I had a spare in my car, so I'm just gonna, afterwards I'll just go get a cab and go get another spare and go put it on.
As the pressure increases, so does his difficulty in thinking of the details of his story. Eventually, he runs out of answers.
Is there something wrong, or?
The deal is I didn't actually have a flat tire this morning.
In nervous subjects, you'll observe what are called manipulators, playing with pens, twisting rings on their fingers, tapping, basically anything to occupy their hands. These manipulators may intensify when your questions become more serious. During non-stressful questions, this subject's hand motions are normal. But watch how his manipulators increase when talking about his lateness.
I noticed you were a little bit late today. What happened?
I had a flat tire.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I had a flat tire, one of those days.
Which tire had the flat? Was it dangerous?
No, it wasn't dangerous to the left rear. Wasn't dangerous to pull it over to the side. A lady stopped. I called, no one could pick me up. She came and dropped me off, luckily.
This subject's posture changes as he's asked to describe the woman who stopped to help him.
I think she had blonde hair, kind of short, really couldn't tell.
His shift in posture wasn't that striking, but when combined with his vague description and uncertain tone, we begin to see a pattern.
Okay.
Tire on the way.
So, I think it was great clip, and maybe you've noticed even more indicators of anxiety and stress than there was on the screen, right? Like maybe you've noticed one of the guys, he was just making that sound of thirsty lips, like yeah, and I think this is another indicator. The dry mouth is another indicator of stress. Remember, we're not giving you the full list of stress and anxiety. We're giving you a principle. Whenever you see changes in behavior, you see changes in behavior, indicator of anxiety and stress, which may be caused by lying, deception, or something else. And this is your job, by questioning, by directing subsequent questions in the areas where changes were noticed, to understand why. So yeah, now real interview, it's child murder, it's a homicide case. This is real police interview, and you will see here, hopefully, through verbal and vocal behaviors of a subject, a lot of signs of stress and anxiety we've just discussed in the previous clip. And also pay attention on the proportion of speech between interviewer and interviewee, and you have to listen carefully because it's not very loud. I'll try to make it as loud as possible.
Well, let's just start by telling me what's going on. What happened today?
Well, okay, got up this morning and, my girlfriend, she needed to go and get some money out of the bank from her mom, I guess. Something had happened, she needed to go to the bank. day she was leaving. And she left, you know. It had probably been several minutes, maybe 5 or 6. And the baby started crying. You know, it was kind of unusual. She cried, but not, you know, she didn't. So what I did, you know, I went in, you know, and I gave her her bottle. You know, she was kind of like, you know, lifted her head up, so I rolled her, you know, more or less on her side and gave her her bottle. You know, you know, she started taking the bottle, so she cried down a little bit, and you know, so I went back in the room, you know, because I was sitting there eating, you know, just had the TV on, it was really intense, and I was just trying to eat my food, you know, really hungry. And it didn't seem more than a couple minutes, I would have to say, within probably another 3 minutes, I heard her like choking and gasping, and you know, it just was very unusual because I hadn't ever heard her do that. So I went in there and she was just kind of kicking and flailing her legs, you know, and I was just like, you know, what's going on here? And you know, she was kind of gasping, but more or less through her nose. So I kind of opened her mouth to see what was wrong, and some fluid came out. I don't know, can't say that it was formula because you know it just happened kind of quick. It was just, you know, just some kind of fluid, and you know, she started gasping again, and so I just, you know, I didn't know what to do. You know, I figured she's choking, she's kicking again. So I remember from the first day that I had, they said you want to try to clear the throat. So I, you know, stuck my finger in her mouth and, you know, try to do like, I guess what they call finger sweep. I believe that's what it's called. And she kind of gasped again, and you know, and it was like, it was blood, but it was like a real watery kind of blood that came out of her mouth. And you know, I immediately, I got very scared, very panicked. I, you know, didn't know what was going on. You know, there was a wash rag that was in the bathroom. I got that, and you know, I wiped her up, and I just. What color rag?
So interesting, isn't it? Hopefully, you were able to identify those verbal and vocal behaviors we've just observed in the previous clip. Those you know, kind of, kinda, and similar things, where subject went very specific or where subject was not specific. Every word matters. Every word in interview matters, and you have to pay attention to every single word which is being said by the subject. Now we're coming to final part of the session, and I want to talk a bit about common interview mistakes, and they go in no particular order, but here they are. Failure to plan. We've talked about importance of planning, and you've seen the consequences of failure to plan. Remember this: fail to plan, plan to fail. As easy as this. And remember also that planning and preparation is not just learning the case and doing your KYC on the subject. It's also preparing yourself for this art of human communication every single day. I like this rule which is taught by Don Raven in his law enforcement classes. 6 feet rule of Don Raven. Whoever comes in your 6 feet area, you go and talk to that person. Just talk, whatever topic is. Just maintain the conversation and let that person speak and listen. Ask questions and listen. You can practice it every day in the shop, on the train, wherever you want. Doesn't take much, but it's a discipline, and this is what makes your interviewing skills or communication skills better. Confirmation bias. We've covered that when we spoke about objectivity. Go in the interview room with open mind. Don't let yourself be held to confirmation bias. Don't form opinion before the inquiry. It's very important. What you think is how you look, and how you look defines that area of control, area of influence from you to your subject, and that defines the outcome of an interview. Don't let this influence to push your subject to close up and to stick to their position, which is in all likelihood be not to share the truth with you. Now, comfort zone. A lot of interviewers, a lot of us are quite content with where we are right now, but try this thought. I like it. Your best interview is still ahead of you. It's still in the future, and you have to work every day of your life to enhance your communication skills, to enhance your interviewing skills, to get to this next interview even more prepared, and then to the next, and then to the next. It's never-ending story. It's the process. So don't get into your comfort zone. Don't sleep there. Diminishing capacity to pay attention. Average time these years 8 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe less, and you have to pay attention for hours. This is self-discipline. This is hard work. Remember first date. Metaphor. I really like it. This is how you should behave. And finally, do not take case or interview personally. It's not you who was influenced or who was caused harm by what was done. Whatever was done, it was not done to you. Whether it's a crime, violent, or fraud, or deception, it's not about you. And also, in the same way, if somebody's trying to deceive you, don't take it personally, take it professionally. Again, the lies, the deception is not about you. It's about the subject and his defense. So try to understand that. Don't take things personally, be professional, maintain objectivity, open mind. Your goal is to get the truth. The art of interview is the art of getting the truth and changing behavior. You can listen to the podcast. It's almost 1 hour long on the internet. I can send you the link. Now Q&A.